1991 was the beginning of the grunge era, but don't tell that to R.E.M. because they may lose their religion as we talk about their classic Out of Time. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. I'm Dean, here with Eric. Before we get started, we've got big news. We have new weekly content that's coming out every Monday. It's called the 3324 Quick Hit, and it's exactly what it is. It's short, 10 minutes or so, 2 subjects. We talk about some behind-the-scenes fun facts, tell a little story. We get you in and we get you out, and then you've got your Big Daddy episodes every Thursday, right, Eric?
That's right. That's right.
And we've
How
got
are you,
quite
Dean?
I'm doing well. We've got quite the volume of episodes, which are easy to find. Unlike Curly's Treasure in City Slickers 2, you won't need a map, and you won't be going to an abandoned amusement park to find our episodes. They're very easy to find on 3324.buzzsprout.com.
Wow, you dug deep in the well for that one. That was a good one.
Curly Washburn.
Yes. I just watched that not too long ago.
What was his brother? What was the brother's name? It was Curly and then Duke. Oh, it was Duke.
It's Duke, yeah.
Yeah, it was Duke. Gold.
What is it? Come and find me. Come and find me. Come and
like the little rascals. How do you like that, Spanky? When he slams down the gold bar.
I think there was one more quote in there that I think you and I were crying in the theater when we saw it.
That was a lot. That was such a
we can't mention it on this thing.
We'll have to do City Slickers. That was such a great film.
Yeah.
So anyway, and it was in this era that, you know what? Actually, I made a reference kind of like from this time frame. So I wasn't being that obscure.
No, it ties right in.
Overly obscure. Just
it
a little.
Ties right in.
Yeah. So we're talking in this episode about R.E.M. and their wonderful, oh my God, wonderful album, Out of Time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this kind of, if you look at the history of R.E.M., they were kicking around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so this was kind of like a run-up. There was a lot that was going on with R.E.M. kind of bubbling under. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit. We won't go terribly into that, but you can easily find that information. But let's we'll do the stats, and then we'll jump into that. Because I was thinking about it, and I was actually remembering about when I first encountered R.E.M.
Yeah.
And it was on cassette. So we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. So released in this, we're talking about Out of Time now, and we've got plenty of time to talk about Out of Time before we run out of time. Time is on our side.
Wow.
There's no time like the present to talk about Out of Time.
Hey,
Eric, what time
you're
is
on
it?
A roll tonight, my friend. You are on a roll. Good Lord.
I had animal crackers beforehand.
Oh, okay.
So this was released in March of 1991, produced by Scott Litt, who was a frequent collaborator from this point going forward, or the one before, and R.E.M. This hit number 1 on the charts. No surprise, 4 times platinum, which means excess of 4 million copies. It did very well. And keeping in with the 4s, there were 4 singles that were released.
Yep.
First one was Losing My Religion. Hit number 4. There we go. 4s all across the board. Shiny Happy People hit number 10. Near Wild Heaven, I don't have any chart information. I don't think it charted here or was released stateside. And Radio Song. R.E.M. was first time ballot 2007 Hall of Fame inductees. They got in first shot. No doubts about that. Yep. And they disbanded in 2011, which we'll get to, which won't be the tale of animosity and acrimony that we usually spin with these groups. We usually are talking about arguments and backstabbing.
That's right. All our favorite bands are like that, aren't they?
They're nasty.
We pick the worst of the worst.
They make great music, but they love to throw punches.
That's right.
Right. I just watched that clip. We just did the Eagles show, and I watched the clip about Glenn Frey, and they actually have the recording of them on stage, like, I'm going to kick your ass. This was not R.E.M. R.E.M. disbanded amicably. They were friends. They said, it's time to go. It's time to end it. And they actually did it the right way.
Yeah, they did.
So,
5 album blocks each time. They started, in the 80s, 5 albums there on the IRS label. There were 5 albums on the Reprise. That was when they hit it big. Reprise Warner years, and then you had the 5 21st Century, the last 5 records. So it's kind of cool that there's 15 albums total.
Yeah, very prolific.
Prolific. Yeah, they put out a body of work. Yep.
Yeah, they were really just kind of knocking them out.
Yep.
And touring. So they were really just a workhorse of a group in the studio,
Mhm.
and then out there, selling to the masses and preaching and getting the word out. So very prolific band. That's what I was surprised about. I was trying to look at when I first heard them, and I was like, well, that was like the third album in, and I thought they were a new group at the time.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about that. So a little bit of brief history. They were formed in Athens, Georgia, in 1980, and if you're familiar with Athens, Georgia, there's another big group from there called the B-52s.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
one of those members figures prominently into this album, as we'll talk about.
Yes.
Like we said, it was a slow roll to the top. This was not like a counterpart in 1991 of Nirvana, where it was like first major label album, boom. R.E.M. was out there paying dues. That's really what it was.
It took a while. But the stuff they were putting out in the early years was certainly not.
Yeah, it wasn't for lack of quality.
The quality was actually, in some cases, a little bit better in my humble opinion. But
it was more. It was more. They were on RRS with which is a small label, not big distribution.
Yeah,
and that's what led them to go to Warner Brothers too. Is it kind of felt like IRS was saying, yeah, we love you, but then the major label distributor, RCA or MCA, whoever it was, just wasn't giving them the love.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of like banging away at it and just not getting where they wanted to, at least as far as that end of the business went.
Yeah.
The band itself is a 4-piece. We'll roll through that. Michael Stipe on vocals, Peter Buck on guitar, Mikey Mills on bass, and Bill Berry.
Bill Berry
on drums. One of the things that R.E.M. is known for, just a fun fact, if you're getting into R.E.M., especially more so in the earlier days, they were known for unintelligible lyrics. They were known for you could not understand what Michael Stipe was singing. And that was part of the allure. It was just his style was not.
Absolutely true. Yep.
Very difficult to understand what he was saying.
That's right. The first album, first real album, Murmur. I remember hearing that album in 83. A friend of mine had it. He bought it. He was into like any new band that was coming out at the time. So I heard that way back when, and it was good stuff. But yeah, he was unintelligible. I mean, he was actually murmuring a lot on the record itself. I mean, he was mumbling more so, and his voice wasn't as strong as I recall, on a lot of that early stuff.
Well, I think it might have been style over. I think it was more of a choice of that's kind of how they were kind of presenting it. And
yeah, they were using a lot of like effects, reverb,
and then they evolved.
Kind of yeah.
I think you see the evolution.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, I caught up with them in 85, and it was the allure of a really low budget video on MTV.
Okay.
And the song was Can't Get There From Here, which is really not a big song for them. But back then it was on Fables of the Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've heard any of the other episodes, I'm a sucker for like a quirky but accessible pop song. And this was even a little outside the bounds of that. This song Can't Get From Here. It was just very strange. And I don't know why, between MTV playing the video all the time and just kind of like, this is kind of strange. I went out and bought the cassette of that. And again, I'm famous for this, is just listening to that song. So I actually had that cassette in 85, but didn't go any further than that. Because that was, even for me, probably like, oh, that's very esoteric and it's quirky. It's an oddity. And I'll just leave it at that,
It's actually probably one of my favorite records, obviously.
Really?
Because I like the quirky. I like the, at the time I thought they were doing something more experimental on that album. It was somewhat of a concept record, as I recall. That album and Green were the only two albums I actually ever owned. Yeah. I didn't even own at a time at all. But,
really?
No.
Yeah. Fear not. I would catch up with you. And Green would be the album in 1988 that I would literally, I played the shit out of that album.
Mm-hmm.
Orange Crush, they started playing that video on MTV.
That's what did it for me.
It's a melancholy song. It's not it's an up-tempo song, but it's certainly not about fun subjects. And I don't know why I connected to it, but maybe because I had already kind of been exposed to R.E.M. a little bit.
Yeah.
With Fables of the Reconstruction, and everyone kind of knew it's the end of the world as we know it. And there was some other songs kind of floating around, but I bought Green, and from the jump, I was onto that album from the first song, from Pop Song 89, which is really up tempo, and then Get Up, You Are Everything. That whole first side just kind of, and then Stand, really introduced me in a big way to R.E.M. And I just kept playing that album over and over.
Yeah,
over and
too.
over.
Me too. Yeah, it was Orange Crush is what prompted me to get it. But I might have listened to that maybe not over and over, but I mean, R.E.M. was never really a mainstay band for me. It was kind of like we were just saying, it's like they come and go. Like you get into like one album, a couple other albums come out, you don't really pay attention.
Yeah.
And then they come back strong. But they definitely came back strong with Green, and with, of course, Without a Time. This would make them huge.
Yeah, but Green was no slouch. Green,
Green,
it was getting 2 times platinum, so 2 million, which is not bad.
It was planting the seeds of what was to come, I think, in the next couple albums, actually, with Out of Time and Automatic for the People, I think. So, but yeah, I mean, it definitely, maybe not as strong. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's pretty powerful. It's different. Out of Time has a different feel. This was Green would also signal that demarcation point. This was their first major label, quote unquote major label record, because they signed with Warner, and there was a big bidding war for R.E.M's services on people's labels, and they actually took a quote unquote pay cut to sign with Warner, because they were going to be basically guaranteed full creative control, which was more important than the money, was being able to be on a major label and do what they wanted to. And Green was the result of that. And wow, just a powerful album. If you've never heard Green, it's a good run up.
Yeah.
And then Out of Time comes out, and it's just like, I've said it before in other shows, it's on like Donkey Kong. Like when this one came out, it was a weird time, right? Because like I said in the open, grunge was bubbling up, and there was we've talked about that, the Nirvana, the Pearl Jam, the Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, totally different sound sonically, totally different, and grabbing people in a different way. And then Out of Time comes out at the same time, and it's just something totally different, and both were able to coexist quite successfully. And I think for different reasons. And I fell in love with this one from the go.
I always felt that they were post-punk. They weren't quite punk, but they weren't really quite new wave either. So I guess they're one of the forerunners of all alternate rock.
Yeah, I have what I've got written in my estimation is alt country folk pop.
Yeah. Yeah, alternate rock
that encompasses everything. At least up to Out of Time.
I think you can throw in jangly pop as well.
Yeah, it's got the pop sensibilities.
Definitely has that on Out of Time. They were doing something completely different, which would now, I think, would translate in today's terms, would probably be known as indie rock, I would think.
Yeah, well, they definitely were. They were indie darlings before. I mean, it was known as college radio or college alternative.
Yeah.
When they were in their IRS days, they were definitely that type of a band that you would only hear on college stations. They weren't getting the airplay on regular radio stations. And then you'd see them, if you saw them on MTV, it would be on that show 120 Minutes, which was all that alternative stuff. All the oddity stuff. You would see The Cure there and some of those other bands. And R.E.M. was in the thick of that. And beloved college darlings, college band, up until Green kind of really exploded them. That really was like, that's, Stand and all that kind of great stuff kind of set them up, really put the golf ball on the tee for Out of Time.
They might have had that at one point or another. I'm sure I probably thought of this back, because the 90s for me were kind of a blur in terms of new music. There was a lot of stuff.
All that drugs, man.
All the stuff.
It's going to burn your brain.
No, because I was at that point, I was still getting into like going backwards, right? We talked about this, a couple of times in other episodes. So, I was just becoming to know Pet Sounds at the time and all this other kind of stuff and the Beatles. And so here comes R.E.M. and I'm thinking, well, I might have thought at one point that because there's, they had that niche kind of thing going on, very college, very sort of like they're in that corner, right? They're like college, like preppy college kids are into this band, and that's their band. Like it's their like sort of like
And
and
you wouldn't be too far from the truth on that.
right, exactly. So which of course, at that point there might have been a time where I just wasn't in my wheelhouse at the time. I was kind of trying to, getting into like a lot of older music. And so I was kind of missing the boat, as it were. Like we talked about this in the Nirvana episode as well. A lot of albums just sort of, just swept right by, I just wasn't really paying attention. And, it's kind of stupid of me to think on those terms, but that, I'm pretty sure it happened at some point in time. So which probably led me not to embrace REM as much as I should have, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, that's one of the things is it's hard to, it's easy to listen to a lot of music, but it's hard to devote your attention to a lot of music, right? It's easy to listen to albums and toss them away. So if you're on a certain journey and on a certain kick, you're and we've all been there. I'm sure everybody has, where you're devouring that, and those other things are passing you by,
right?
And you're seeing them in the rearview mirror, and you're just like, it doesn't mean anything because what you're focusing on is in front of you, whatever journey you're on. Eventually, hopefully, we've all missed those things, but I can say from the jump, At a Time was there. The CD, I was just like, I was ready for it, and I was not pleasantly surprised, but it is different than Green. It's definitely got a different. It skews more towards the country, folk sound and the pop, and less of the alt of Green. Green is very alternative sounding, just in subject material and in sound. And At a Time is a little bit of a diversion.
Mm-hmm.
It set him on another path, as it were.
It comes across as we'll get into it. I guess are we gonna go track by track on this one?
Yeah, we'll pretty much go track by track. I think there's a lot of great stuff in here.
Yeah,
it's I have to say before we start, unequivocally, I think it's one of the best sounding albums I've ever heard. Just as far as listening to it, like production wise, no matter where I listen to it, if I listen to it on Spotify and it's streaming, if I listen to the CD, or I wasn't able to get the original album, this is a repress, it's just a great sounding album. It's so crisp.
Yeah.
Everything is well defined, even though it's a 4-piece. They don't go crazy with the overdubs and really expanding the sound. They keep it kind of simple, maybe 1 or 2 instruments, maybe overdub of a mandolin, this and that. But sonically, it's just a beautiful sounding. It's just a pleasure to listen to.
I agree. It's probably their first, great sounding.
Yeah, everything's a little murkier.
Yeah, even Green was a little rough around the edges there, but
absolutely,
but you're absolutely right about that. Yep.
This one just sounds more open.
Yeah,
it just sounds kind of like everything's a little more just accessible, and you can really pick out the bass and everything that's going on in this album, which makes it that much more enjoyable to listen to as well. You don't have to fight it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some albums you got to fight through just because of the production. If it's really murky and muddy, you're kind of struggling to listen to stuff. And this one is just not that. So,
and you want to love this stuff so bad, but it's like a production makes a big deal.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it does affect how you approach an album, how it's heard, how it's, you could take it and on one hand and say that, oh, well, that's part of the art of it. They did that on purpose.
Or sometimes it's just a shitty producer.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Corners or budgetary or people, sometimes there's a difference between making something lo-fi on purpose. We're chasing this sound and we're going to use, like Jack White and maybe some of that stuff. But then there are times when albums have no reason not to sound good. It's just because of the production is murky, or the techniques, or the mastering, whatever it is, can just absolutely ruin and just sink it. Sometimes it just make it not, like you said, not fun to listen to, even though you love it. It's just like,
and this was an age like the later, the 80s and the 90s were. This was the time of like box sets were coming out and remixes galore. I mean, everything was being remastered and remixed, and there's so many different ways to go. And you kind of take the history of like somebody like an audio file and they go, oh, there's like 6 different releases. I had no idea that there were so many releases in some cases, of albums. But but in case of R.E.M., the band that has been steadily growing over the years, and for this to come out the gate as good as it sounded was a triumph for them. Triumph.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like the culmination of all their hard work.
Yeah. More focused. There was a focus to it.
That's a great adjective.
Very, very polished, very but not in a too fancy
glossy way.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not the 80s gloss. It's crisp. It's crisp sounding is what it is. It's crisp and it's open, and it's well defined. That's what it is. So let's get into it. Let's stop talking about what it sounds like and let's actually talk about the songs. Let's do it.
The GD album.
Yeah. The MF. So first up is Radio Song, and this is a kind of you already know you're in for something different. It's an up-tempo song. But you've already got a guest on it, and there's one guest here, and then there's another guest that is peppered throughout the album. But the first guest here is KRS-One from Boogie Down Productions, the rapper. He's so already the collaboration, a different look, incorporating different musical styles into what they were doing, kind of being open to that, right, and not just staying in their kind of alt college thing. Really, just a really a banging song just to open it up. It was supposed to be just like KRS-One was just supposed to do like the yeahs that he does and the hoops. But then he said, he came up with some stuff. He came up with a couple of lines. Leave it in. Leave it in.
This thing is like it starts off as a typical. You think it's like a kind of a ballad type of thing, and Michael Stipe with his voice, and it comes in with this beautiful like sort of melodic phrasing going on, and then all of a sudden it just kicks into this groove, and you're just wow. Yeah. Kind of reminds me. It's very, for me, it's very Talking Heads. I think even with the talk, the talking over the rapper, like KRS, kind of rapping over or speaking over the song. It kind of reminds me of the Talking Heads kind of thing with the bass and so I
and it's got some violins in it. It's got some guitar. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot in there. There's a bit. I think it's for an opening track. It's a pretty big statement of what's to come or where R.E.M. is going. Is that they're really not afraid to open things up and try something different. It doesn't say, like you said, it doesn't sound totally different, but putting in KRS-One into the mix, into the R.E.M. recipe, gives you something different.
Yeah, they can do that. R.E.M. can do like you said. It's more. This album feels more sort of country and folk edged, but every now and again there's those songs, those fast numbers with the groove and the bass and the drums, and they just kick in and they do it well.
Yeah, that's the thing about R.E.M. is they're not known like they're not known for like jam sessions and scorching guitar solos. They're almost kind of nameless and faceless as musicians. Make no mistake. I mean, on this album, you can really hear the expertise. The Mike Mills bass playing is all over the place on this album. Mm-hmm. Bill Berry's drums. He's just
it's much more refined. Much more refined, and they scale it back. They don't want to go there. They don't want to get too loud. They don't want to get too experimental. They languish in the refinement of
the arrangements. These songs are well arranged, and that's the great thing about it. And then next you've got like The Monster. This was the one. The music video is really what did it for this. Was just the imagery. People really misunderstood the song, right? Because next up is Losing My Religion, and it's really not about that at all. Mm-hmm. Losing my religion is actually a Southern term for you're kind of getting on my last nerve. I'm about to lose my temper. Like I'm going to lose my religion if you keep I don't believe in God anymore. So it wasn't like, so a lot of misunderstandings about that. And then there was a lot of you could say somewhat religious imagery in the video. It looked very much like scenes from paintings. It was very artistic. And this just kind of blew up on MTV.
It's easy to go there. It's easy to go because of their past stuff. It's easy to take that more esoteric route and look at it from that perspective, but it's deceptively simple. The
nice mandolin riff that just keeps repeating. They just find the groove in this song. It's just very accessible and
very intelligent, just smart, just the way they fool you in that sense. I think it's they might, sometimes they might be, too smart for their own good, but I just feel like, hey, that's what I dig. I mean, that's more of my wheelhouse anyway. I'm always into this weird sort of like more intelligent and perhaps on the border, like pretentious kind of people, but I love when you're fooled. I love when you're equally challenged but fooled at the same
Yeah.
time into thinking it's one thing and it's completely something else.
Yeah, because on the surface,
know?
you just by the title, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, all right, is
Yep.
this, is this Madonna like a prayer? Is this going to be the same type of
Yeah.
thing, the same type of whatever? No, it's on the, like you said, on the surface it is, but it's not really about that. If you're from the like up north where we are, we might have thought that, but if you're from the south, that's just a regular saying. They're like, yeah, no big deal. Like, yeah. We get it. We get it down here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like that was the big hit. That would go to number 4 and really start to propel this album again with the, we can't discount at this, still in the 90s, the power of MTV to drive that. And especially with R.E.M, with the visuals, and just this was just all over the place. It was being played multiple times per day. This video is absolutely crazy.
I think it's one of the, there is a show. I forget where it's on. It's a streaming service. It is a show about songs, and this is one of them. They focus on one song, not an album, but a song, and there's like multiple artists on it. I think this was like one of the episodes they based on was Losing My Religion, and the structure, how they wrote the song, and it's pretty cool. I forget the name of the show. I believe it's on. I want to say it's on Netflix, or one of the big streaming services. But check it out. I mean, it's probably easy to find. I'm sure it probably pops up, right out the gate.
Yeah.
Being that there's so many great artists on it. Yeah.
Google search.
Yep.
There is a tool for that. We're going to harness the power of the internet to find that.
Yeah.
Then next up, you've got the song Low. Very atmospheric, takes its time.
This might be
not in a rush to get anywhere.
This might be where they get a little weird. There's always that one or two tracks on the album where it kind of, they kind of go there, and it's, I don't even know what it's about. It really doesn't say anything. The song, it just kind of plods along, but you're taken in by it.
I like it because of the production. Yeah, it's like you listen to it and you're enjoying it for what it's doing sonically and what it's accomplishing. And it's just like, it's just so crisp and clear, but it's not. It's got some swirly stuff in it a little bit, and it's just got a really monotone vocal for the most part from Stipe, and just kind of again, like just creating an atmosphere, right? And creating a feeling, and that's what that is about. And it's kind of like really interesting, and I really dig it. And it kind of sets you up for another. Here's we're getting some of the nice pop stuff, and one of the secret weapons for R.E.M is Mike Mills, is the bass player. He doesn't sing he doesn't get lead very often, especially on this was released as a single, so he never gets a song that sings lead as a single. But I really like his voice.
I do too.
He's got a really like a light voice, a little bit Stipe-ish when it's high, but not exactly like Michael Stipe. And then they kind of ghost Michael Stipe kind of ghosts him on this too. And it's just this is just Near Wild Heaven is just a really nice song. And this is the first appearance of Kate Pearson. And Kate Pearson is from the B-52s. And if you're not sure, she's the one with the red hair. You usually have Kate Pearson and Cindy Wilson. And Cindy Wilson usually has the blonde or the silver beehive or and Kate Pearson has the red beehive.
Pearson has the bouffant hairdo, like the big red.
And she's got a voice for days. I mean, she really, that's one of the secret weapons of this album too, was I think bringing in Kate Pearson, and she's throughout the album. And I think she just brings a little extra different look, like something different to this whole album. And that's the great thing is you contrast this with Green, and you can't really draw a lot of comparisons of this sounds like that. It's really got, just because of all the different things they're trying.
That's right.
And Near Wild Heaven is just a great song. It's just a great breezy. It's a breezy song, is what it is.
It's got that really great. Got that real great guitar. That sort of twangy, sort of Rickenbacker, almost
it's
like
countryish.
It's countryish, but it's reminiscent of a little bit of Beatles for me. It's a little
Birds.
bit of Birds.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some influences
Roger McGuinn,
there, and and it's
Tom Petty, like that loves that sound, like that type of guitar.
Yeah.
And it just has, it's all over this album, actually. That's the sound of that guitar.
Yeah, because it's going to show up in the song after the next one.
Yep.
Well, it shows up throughout, but yeah, you're right. Next up is oddly enough, they kind of foretold Marvel. And the song that closes out side one is called Endgame.
Endgame.
But it has nothing to do with the Marvel universe of the MCU. It's not inspired by Thanos.
No,
this song.
The snap
It's
did not
basically an
happen.
instrumental with some vocal phrasing.
Yeah.
And
which
it just
kind of it just goes. It just goes
Yeah.
on and on and on. And you're just taken in by it.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like end credits to a film. Like it sounds like something you'd be hearing at the end of a movie. Kind of like just when everything's rolling, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's kind of mellow. And yeah, it's got that repeat. It's kind of like a repeating riff.
Yeah.
And there's just there's not words spoken. There's just kind of like vocal, like la da da da, like that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of, it's really laid back. It's just kind of just.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because I think they split the album. Like the first side of the album, there is somewhat of I wouldn't say a concept, but it's split into two parts. I think side one is more about in the now, kind of what they're talking about, what's going on in the now. Side two is more sort of reflective. It's going back at happier times, thinking back, memories, that kind of thing. The songs reflect that. So that may be, like you say, sort of an ending credit kind of thing to close out side one. So there you go. So it's kind of like
really, really interesting that they would do basically an instrumental.
Yeah.
But again, just great. It's just, again, this is so great to listen to. So it almost doesn't matter what they're doing, because it's just so well arranged and just so crisp sounding. I really love
meditate to it. I think you kind of
if that was on a loop, that was on a loop, you could definitely kind of put that on and and zone out if you really wanted to. I'm sure someone may have done that. You could just put that on a loop forever. Side two opens up with everybody's favorite, my favorite, Shiny Happy People. Which Michael Stipe has kind of a little bit like distanced himself from. He's like, well, I kind of wrote it. It's supposed to be goofy. It was inspired by a Chinese propaganda poster of, shiny, happy people, everyone be happy. And he took it, but it's got that, it starts out kind of waltzy.
Yeah.
With like this waltz kind of thing. And then you get right into the song, and there's that guitar again is there. It's just kind of like that guitar riff. You got Mike Mills giving some backing support. You got Michael Stipe, and you have Kate Pearson out there too, very prominent. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I love this song. And I love the video. The video is just so fun. It's just smiling, and it's just so evocative. Like when you look at the video, it's like, how could you not just kind of be smiling?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very similar to Stand from Green, but it's also,
it could be this versions of it. Yeah, this could be Out of Time's version of Stand,
because it kind of starts the same way, has that little instrumental whirling kind of thing going on, and then it kicks in. But it also kind of reminds me of something, it doesn't sound like it, but something reminiscent of something like Love Shack in that kind of fun sort of party sense. It does. Love Shack has a deeper meaning, of course, but but this song, I don't think you can really read anything but what it's talking about.
Yeah, that's it. It's just very simple. It just evokes an emotion. Yeah.
Again,
what I love about this song?
Simple. Yeah.
What keeps, for some reason, whenever I listen to it, the thing that keeps like popping out in my mind on this song is Bill Berry's drum work. For some reason, every time he hits like the crash cymbal, I hear it much louder than it is. Like for some reason, I really focus in on that. I don't know if it's me. Maybe everybody else can listen to Shiny Happy People and listen to whenever he hits the cymbal, it just, for some reason, in my mind, it's really prominent and jumpy and kind of, it's just like, I just love his drum work on it.
Is there water coming off the cymbal, like in the music videos, like talking about like the hair bands, like they hit the cymbals and there's like water like splashing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about it, but for some reason, besides the greatness of the song, like the drums really stand out for me. It's like I almost hear them separate. I'm able to pull them out for some reason. I just love it, which is just really weird.
He's sadly, we just lost Charlie Watts, and it's funny. It's because I think he kind of reminds me of Charlie Watts. Very straightforward drumming.
Yeah, gets it done.
Gets it done. Keeping the beat, restrained, doing exactly what's needed.
Yeah,
that is the mark of a great drummer. It's not always about.
Yeah, you shouldn't really know they're there for the
Yeah.
most part.
Right.
If they're doing their job right, Phil
Right.
Collins.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Phil. Just kidding. We love
Or
Phil Collins.
Keith Moon.
Or Keith.
We're people of that ill.
So another kind of a song which I really like, it's very intriguing to me, is Belong. Because it's another kind of mainly instrumental, and it's got spoken lyrics, and they're kind of low in the mix, so it almost kind of like you don't know what's going on with it.
Yeah.
It like, and the instrumentation is really pushed forward, and the lyrics are just kind of spoken. It deals with like a mother, and it actually is about a mother and child, but it's about someone watching them witnessing an event from outside. So it's not like from the mother and child's point of view, but someone else looking at them, witnessing something else, which is weird.
Yeah.
But it's just so you really, I encourage you to there's not a lot of lyrics to it, but if you get the lyrics online, you can kind of read along with it. Like I said, it's not a lot to it, but it's just a really interesting song. It's just it's kind of a up-tempo kind of rocking song, actually. And then it's driven just with this is where Stipe gets that unintelligible moniker from, at least on this album. It's kind of hard
I think even when they're not saying anything, it's still lyrical. There's sort of a lyrical music, like the phrasing is just the way it's laid out. It almost feels like you hear lyrics, but they're not there. You're waiting for somebody to come in and with a line, and even though it's not there, it's still there for, in your mind. Like again, it's how they deceive you. It's so simple, but yet at least that's the effect I get. I don't know if it's for everybody, but some people said that this album isn't as deep as some of their other records. But you and I were always into production. We're always into music first.
Yeah.
And how that comes across, how it grabs you, and lyrics come second in that sense. Cause but you can appreciate a great lyric, but it always took a backseat.
Yeah.
For me,
yeah,
it has to sound good. It has to grab you in order for me to be even interested in what they're saying. Otherwise, I'd just go read a book, a book of poetry or something,
without the distraction.
Exactly.
Of note on Belong, I love the bass. Love the bass work on that track as well. Again, that's the thing, is these guys are so underrated. Peter Buck is not known in the pantheon and the halls of fame for guitar players. But he got done what needed to get done for R.E.M. It's
exactly.
Not everything is about flash, and he is certainly one of the least flashy guitar players you'll ever see. So low key, but just all these guys. Mike Mills is such a great bass player, so underrated. I forget what song it is on this album, but he actually said, "I stole the bass line rhythm from John McVie." He goes, "I couldn't think of anything." He goes, I couldn't think of what to do with the song, so I just kind of took a John McVie style bass line.
That's neat. That's cool.
Admit it,
Hey, there you go. And again, if you're familiar with Fleetwood Mac, John McVie and Mick Fleetwood, they're certainly no like extroverts in terms of like they keep it tight, they keep it solid,
and they keep it moving,
and that's what you want. Yeah.
And
that's how you build your sound. R.E.M. is mistakably one of the, there's really not that many bands that sound too much like R.E.M. Maybe, there are, certainly there were bands like the Gin Blossoms I can come to mind, maybe, or Toad the Wet Sprocket that kind of had that twangy sound, but they were never as deep. They were never as established in their overall sound and confident. I kind of equate them. They're kind of like the more softer end of U2, I would think. U2 establishing their own sound. Exactly who they are as they come out of the 80s and into the 90s. They did the same thing. They kind of established, they did different things, but it's U2. R.E.M's kind of the same way for me. But they're much more acoustic, more softer edge, more rootsy and that kind of thing. But it's just, you can't mistake what they've accomplished in their overall sound of how they built that over the years and just kept it and just
that's the thing, the quality was still there. And even one of R.E.M's contemporaries, Kurt Cobain, said famously, like, I wish I could write songs like R.E.M. So he kind of even understood like what they brought and how they were able to construct these tunes. And with that, we're moving on to Half a World Away,
Half a World Away,
which is kind of a slower song. This may even have more. If you're looking for a connection to Green, I think Half a World Away might be the closest, even lyrically styled, to something on Green, like Hair Shirt or something else from Green. But Half a World Away is kind of that, really kind of the ballad, not ballad. They don't do ballads really, except for, well, Everybody Hurts is kind of a ballad. Slower song, right? Well, I don't want to say Half a World Away is a ballad because it's got a heavy acoustic guitar appearance. So it's not big with with the electric instruments. It's more acoustic guitar. It just has that heavy feel to it, and
it's more folky.
It's got some heavy lyrical stuff.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, maybe it evokes perhaps maybe somebody like, I'm thinking of people like Nick Drake or somebody from that, or Jeff Buckley, that kind of like heavy feel acoustically, bringing in that sort of presence to it. That's what kind of reminds me of those kinds of guys. So,
yeah. And then Mr. Mikey Mills makes another appearance on Texarkana, which is the name of the song. Just a up tempo, just a great moving song. Great contrast to Half a World Away and to Belong. Also, those two songs kind of maybe linked together, have a little bit more in common. And then Texarkana just kind of gets it up again, gets the tempo going, gets the beat going. Just a nice kind of jangly song again too. They're really just putting out great pop songs that are infinitely listenable. That's what the great thing is about this album.
Mm-hmm. And this again evokes this to me as like a sort of like a jangly pop song from the '60s. It has that feel to it. I can't really, so many bands from that era that just come to mind. I can't really think of names right now. It's just but the sound was there. So they're kind of taking that and running with it for the '90s, which I feel. The '90s was more or less going back to the '60s anyway. A lot of bands were kind of, trying to reestablish that harder edged sound from the late '60s, early '70s. Psychedelic rock even was creeping in. Did a little experimentation here and there, but yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah. And then you got Country Feedback, which kind of slows it back down again. There's a lot of variety on this album, which is nice too. They really kind of mix it up in a good way. So Country Feedback is just another kind of slower song. Stipe vocal, which is really nice. This and don't let the title fool you. It is country. It is the closest probably to country on this album. Mm-hmm. It's kind of got that kind of slidey guitar or almost like a pedal steel sounding guitar. Yeah. It's really got that country feel to it. And the feedback, Country Feedback responds or means some of the electric instruments that are used and then kind of with the country feel. So really great song. And then you get Kate Pearson comes back for one more. She comes back for one more, which is Me and Honey, which is a really nice way to. It's kind of. It sounds like the final song on an album. Like this would not. I don't think this would go anywhere else but at the end.
Yeah,
I just think it's just a nice close to the album. It almost sounds like improvised to me. It has like a really loose feel to it. It almost sounds like that. Yeah, that they're just kind of singing.
Yeah. It again. I think that thematic thing of evoking happier times is very, very present on this side of the record. And it's a beautiful way to end the album.
Yeah, this was actually written in response to, I believe, a 10,000 Maniacs song because Stipe was hanging out and just briefly involved with Natalie Merchant, and she wrote a song, and this is actually about pregnancy, but from a man's point of view. So if you kind of give the lyrics another listen, it was in response. I forget what the song was by 10,000 Maniacs, but it was in response to that, which was about, I guess, pregnancy and having a child. But now this is like the same type of thing, but from a guy's point of view about what it means to him about having, someone's pregnant, but you're involved, but you're not involved,
Yeah.
So really interesting, really strange subject matter.
for a pleasant song, a
For a pleasant
melody.
song.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's again, it's very deceptive, and I love Kate Pearson's work on this too. She just is a good compliment to Michael Stipe's voice. I think just her on this album, I think just really kind of ups it a little bit more. Kind of you get a star or a star and a half extra on this album,
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
because of that.
it's funny you mentioned 10,000 Maniacs. It didn't even. I just completely forgot about that band. But man, all that's coming back now, and this album really evokes that sound of that band. So it's
Right, that like
you know
what's the matter here, and
it's like
that album in my tribe. It was
oh
in
yeah.
that area.
Oh yeah, even like the Sundays too, which they only made like a couple of albums, a duo from England. I remember Summertime. That's the song Summertime, and very very pleasant kind of. It's that jangly pop is what
Mhm.
what it is. So it's that that sound, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's certain people that say that this album again is not as deep as that next album would be, which is Automatic for the People. Most people prefer this record. I find it to be extremely dark. It's a very dour record. I don't know, but it's considered like their best of this bunch.
I mean,
of this block.
it's a tough.
You know,
Yeah, it's tough. Automatic for the People is quite formidable.
it is.
It is a formidable album.
There's
It is definitely has a more somber
there's a depth to it that is
feel to it.
right.
But you've got this one of my favorite songs of R.E.M. all time is the Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight, which is not a big song by them, but I love that song, and it's on Automatic for the People. And then of course you got Man on the Moon, which then became actually the title of a movie about Andy Kaufman because it was about him. Night Swimming. Yeah, I mean you've got
Find
such
the
great
River.
stuff on
Sweetness
there.
Follows is really gorgeous as well. But again,
so they really followed up. I mean, I like Out of Time just because it is more accessible, and I think
fun.
It hits my pop. It hits me in my pop sensibilities.
Yeah.
But they definitely swung for the fences. Everybody Hurts. That video was everywhere. Everybody was affected by it just because of the way they presented it, and in the traffic jam, and just kind of everybody. Really, I mean, they really, we're talking about like what arguably might not be their greatest album, but I think Out of Time is their greatest album for me, just because I got into it so deeply when it first came out, but yeah, they didn't stop. And then they came out with Monster after that, which, was just another big one, right? It was, what's the frequency, Kenneth?
I love that one.
Yeah, it's just kind of
such an odd song. But I love it. It's great.
I mean that one, 4 times platinum as well. So they hit a consistent streak, while also evolving. They didn't make major changes in evolving their sound. They kind of, things got definitely harder. Like by the time Monster got around, it was definitely a little bit harder edged.
Yeah.
Bang and Blame, and just there was a little bit, there was if you contrast Monster with Out of Time, there's definitely a difference. And I think that, when you've got the Automatic for the People in between, that really kind of bridges it. But yeah, damn, they just stayed consistent and just continued to put out quality stuff. And that was the thing about R.E.M. And that was why they eventually ended up breaking up or not breaking up. I'm not going to say they broke up. They disbanded because they felt like, yeah, we don't want to keep doing this if the quality is going to suffer. So it wasn't about lawsuits. It wasn't about musical direction. It wasn't about, this guy did this and we had a clunker. It's just kind of like, yeah, you know what? We're going to ride off into the sunset. We're going to part as friends and go. And you know what? Like we said, there's not many bands that actually do that.
No.
That are able to have the foresight to say, let's kind of scotch it out. And Bill Berry did leave earlier.
He did.
He had some medical issues, but he came back. And then I think it was after Monster, or was it after
it was the
Automatic for the People? Or was it after that even? I think it was into the 2000s. But he's like, yeah, you know what? I've had enough of the pop star life. I'm going to go buy a farm. I'm going to go see what else life has for me. So these guys are just kind of regular people. Like not a lot of drama in this band. And that's why this episode is going to be so short.
They came. They were huge. They established a much larger audience. They were worldwide. I mean, they
Yeah.
became one of the biggest bands of the '90s. But they just kept that low key, like under the radar feel. They were just real cool guys. Like they
Yeah, but
just
very, very socially conscious though. They
yeah.
very much,
Oh, very political as well.
yeah,
But,
into that and very much there,
yeah.
very much into, activism where they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, supporting, certain political candidates and what have you there. But really kind of keeping it somewhat separate from the music. And that was just, yeah, they really managed their career well. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is you get a lot of bands that just kind of keep plugging along and they kind of outrun their problems, I guess, if you stay around long enough. But
Mm-hmm.
they kind of understood. It's like, yeah, you know what, like, we've had a good run. Like you said, I think they disbanded in 2011. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
31 years,
Yeah.
right? From start to finish.
But the thing of it is I haven't heard a lick of the 21st century material. Like the last 5 albums, I
Yeah.
know nothing. I don't think I've heard one song. At that point, I kind of
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think I lost him after Monster.
yeah. I just it's not for because I stopped liking them in any way or anything. It's
just kind of
one of those things.
moving over, moving on
Didn't
to
even
something.
realize they had made as many albums as they did after Monster. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they just put out a lot of
I just wish I had gotten into the band. I had more of an open mind back then. I don't regret the directions I was taking and listening where I was going, opening all kinds of doors, listening to a lot of older stuff, stepping into like more blues and jazz. I enjoyed every minute of those experiences then. But bands like R.E.M. and Nirvana and a lot of the grunge bands, like they just sort of came and I just wish that I had the ear for that stuff at that point in time, just to be in because they're such cool bands.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It's
Yeah,
quality stuff.
and it's great that they were able to really,
Yeah.
Get in the ring with Nirvana
Mm-hmm.
and that whole thing, right? Because that was kind of taking over a lot of the, the not necessarily the charts, but popular music. The effects of grunge. That's all everybody was talking about. And then R.E.M. comes out with this kind of poppy, country, folky album, and it sells a ton. Almost like the anti-grunge, really. For people that weren't digging that, but weren't into the straight up, poppy pop songs, you've got something that's in that alt folk country area, and they really kind of rolled the dice, and they came up big, and it really set them up to continue to evolve, give them the confidence, right? Because they were on a major label that let them do what they want. So now they really weren't bound by anything, and they had a record company that was certainly on their side and willing to work with them. What more can you ask for from a career then? Is a label that lets you do what you want to do, is behind you. And then you get lucky enough to evolve into something that's really popular and people want it. And then you continue to grow. And yeah, they were hit, in the probably mid 90s. That was like the pinnacle for them. Like they were playing monster shows and monster arenas, just everything. And they managed it well. And yeah, they kept it low key, no controversies, no arrests, no fights, no murders, no, at least that we know of.
That's right.
That did it. Yeah. So that, like, R.E.M. is just, and it's not like, oh, these guys are boring. It's just that they make great, fantastic music. I mean, that's what their job was. And that's what their passion was. And like I said, from Michael Stipe to Mike Mills and Bill Berry and Peter Buck, these guys, you don't really, they're not household names. Maybe Michael Stipe is, but as a unit, as formidable as anything that was going on at the time.
They're great. You could take all of that stuff and certainly cherry pick the best of the best and more. It's not a matter of, I don't think for me, it's not a matter of one particular album. I think it's more just from the very beginning, just going in and just taking not just the hits. And because they, to be honest, they didn't have as many hits back then, maybe one or two songs in the early years, but there were so many great songs off those early albums that you just, there's so much into it. And you can make a hell of a playlist or whatever, just by cherry picking the best stuff from each album.
Yeah.
And it would be a really, really good listen.
So
yeah.
as we close, let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you had to pick a 3-album cycle, would you pick Green, Out of Time, and Automatic for the People? Or would you pick Out of Time, Automatic for the People, and Monster? Ooh.
I'd probably start with Green.
Ooh. So you do Green,
Yeah.
Out of Time, and Automatic for the People?
I think so.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think I would agree. If you're looking for a 3-album cycle that best personifies what R.E.M. was doing,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. Because Green still gives you some of the older tinged stuff that they were doing.
Right.
It's kind of more, it calls back more to their college indie stuff.
Yeah.
And then Out of Time is kind of like the popular commercial one. And then Automatic for the People continues on that, but with a little bit of a darker, not a darker feel, not necessarily darker themes, but it just, it has a heavier feel to it.
Well, it was the 90s.
But still a fantastic album.
It was the 90s at that point.
It was the 90s. A lot of angst.
Exactly.
A lot of people walking around with frowns on for some reason.
And Michael Stipe wasn't afraid to go there. That's the decision he made when he wanted to do he wanted to go deep and down that well and say, I want to make that kind of an album. And
he wasn't afraid to tackle those themes.
Right.
That's the thing. He's not fearless as a lyricist, not afraid to go into places or couch stuff in like Shiny Happy People, actually about a Chinese propaganda poster, but couched in a poppy song.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you think it's about one thing and he's kind of, wink, wink on the side. It's not really about that, but let's kind of put it in this wrapper and you'll enjoy it. And I can't say enough about Out of Time. I enjoy it immensely. It's one of my favorite albums of like all time. It would be in my top list. Absolutely.
Oh, nice.
It's like one of the easy put-ons for me. So that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. We appreciate you listening. Social media, we're going to do the plugging. You're going to hear the plugging at the end anyway, but we're going to do it for you live because that's our commitment to you. Is Instagram and Facebook, we're at 3324 podcast. On Twitter, we're at 3324p. So you leave off the oddcast and it's just 3324p. New episodes weekly on Thursdays. We've got our new quick hit supplemental material. It's almost like a bonus features in a DVD. You can check that out on Mondays. They're little small bites of great little nuggets of information, trivia, and just fun music, stories about music and film. That's going to do it. This has been Dean for Eric. Thanks for tuning in. And we will catch you on the flip side.